There's a guy in every gym who's in there for 2 hours a night doing 5 different exercises for the same muscle, chasing a pump until his arm is shaking and somehow still not growing. Meanwhile, the guy next to him does 4 exercises total, leaves after 50 minutes, and keeps getting bigger every month. The instinct in this industry is always more sets, more exercises, more soreness. But a growing pile of research is showing that a huge chunk of the volume people grind through in the gym is doing almost nothing for them, and in some cases, it might actually be working against them. So today I want to break down what actually counts as productive training volume, what counts as junk, and how you can keep your training varied and genuinely enjoyable without quietly sabotaging your own progress. So, Arthur No-Fee, Fitness here. Hello and welcome. So Arthur No-Fee Fitness here. Hello and welcome. Let's start with the most basic assumption in bodybuilding, that more sets equals more muscle. There is a real relationship there. Researchers have confirmed it repeatedly, but the size of that relationship is a lot smaller than people assume, and it doesn't just keep climbing forever. A major meta-analysis in 2017 found a meaningful difference between higher and lower weekly set volumes for muscle growth, but a newer and more detailed analysis published in 2024 dug deeper into the numbers and found something that should change how you think about your own program. Once researchers accounted for how directly a set actually targets a given muscle, they estimated the benefit of each additional set at somewhere around 0.25% of extra growth at an average training volume of roughly 12 sets per week per muscle. That is a real number, but it's a small one. And the researchers specifically flagged that as total volume keeps climbing, there's growing evidence of a plateau and possibly even a point where adding more sets actually blunts your results instead of improving them, likely because the extra fatigue starts outpacing the extra stimulus. Here's the detail from that same research that I think matters most for this conversation. Not every set you perform for a muscle counts the same. The researchers separated sets into direct sets, where an exercise is clearly targeting a muscle as its primary mover, and indirect or fractional sets, where a muscle is only assisting. Think of your side delts during an overhead press, or your biceps during a heavy row. Those muscles are working, but they're not getting anywhere near the stimulus a dedicated lateral raise or curl would give them. If you're counting every incidental set towards your weekly volume for a muscle, you're overestimating how much real work that muscle is actually getting, and you may be convincing yourself you've already done enough for a muscle group when you actually haven't touched it directly at all that week. Let's make this concrete for a second, because it's easy to nod along with a concept like this and then go do the exact same workout tomorrow. Say you train chest on Monday with 4 sets of bench press, 3 sets of incline dumbbell press, and 3 sets of cable flies. Then you train shoulders on Wednesday with 4 sets of overhead press and 3 sets of lateral raises. If you're logging all of that as chest and shoulder volume separately without accounting for overlap, you're double counting. Your front delts were already getting real, direct work during that bench and incline pressing on Monday. So by the time Wednesday's overhead pressing rolls around, you're adding to a muscle that's already been trained hard just 2 days earlier, whether you labeled that session shoulder day or not. This is exactly the kind of hidden overlap that makes people think they're following a balanced program when their recovery is actually being quietly overloaded on specific muscles without them realizing it. Now let's talk about the version of junk volume that almost nobody frames correctly, which is effort. A detailed 2024 series of meta-regressions looked at how close to failure a set needs to be taken to actually drive muscle growth, using repetitions in reserve as the measurement, meaning how many more reps you could have done before failing. The clear finding was that hypertrophy improves as sets get closer to failure. A set where you stop 5 or 6 reps short of failure is doing meaningfully less for you than a set taken to 1 or 2 reps in reserve. This is the quiet, unglamorous truth behind a lot of junk volume in real gyms. Guys aren't necessarily doing too many exercises, they're doing plenty of sets that never get close enough to genuine effort to actually matter, padding their workout log with volume that their muscles barely register as a stimulus. Picture someone doing 4 sets of leg extensions where the last set could have easily produced another 5 or 6 reps. On paper, that's 4 sets of direct quad volume. In practice, that final set probably contributed almost nothing beyond a bit of extra blood flow because the muscle fibers that only get recruited under real strain were never actually asked to do anything. But before you swing all the way to grinding every single set to complete failure, there's an important counterpoint from the same body of research. A separate meta-analysis found only a trivial statistical advantage for training all the way to true muscular failure compared to stopping just 1 to 3 reps short. And multiple controlled trials training people for 8 straight weeks found essentially identical muscle growth between a failure group and a near failure group. The catch is that training to absolute failure consistently generates significantly more fatigue and requires meaningfully more recovery time without a proportional payoff in growth. So the real sweet spot researchers keep landing on isn't maximum effort on every single set, it's sets taken close to failure, roughly 0 to 3 reps in reserve, without needing to grind out that final rep where your form breaks down and your nervous system pays for it for days afterward. So here's the picture forming. Junk volume isn't really about doing too many exercises. It's sets that are counted as work for a muscle but barely touch it directly. And it's sets performed so far from genuine effort that they don't provide much of a growth signal at all, while still costing you time, energy, and recovery capacity you could have spent better elsewhere. Now let's get to the part you actually asked about. Keeping this fun without turning your training into a mess. There's a real temptation to solve boredom by constantly swapping exercises. New machine, new grip, new angle, every single session. And there is research on exactly this approach. A controlled study took experienced lifters and split them into 2 groups. One repeating the same core exercises every session for 8 weeks, and the other rotating through a much wider variety of movements for the same muscle groups. Muscle growth ended up essentially identical between the 2 groups, but there's a subtlety that showed up in other work on this same question. Some evidence suggesting that when exercise rotation becomes excessive, it can create a mild trade-off. More accumulated muscle damage and soreness for a similar or even slightly reduced growth outcome. Partly because constantly changing movements makes it much harder to track genuine progressive overload from week to week, since you're never repeating the same lift long enough to know if you're actually getting stronger at it. What did clearly improve in the variation group across these studies was motivation. People reported enjoying their training more and feeling more mentally engaged when exercises changed regularly. So the practical answer sits right in the middle of those 2 findings, and it's genuinely good news. Keep your main compound lifts, the ones you're actually trying to track and progress on week to week, consistent enough that you can tell whether you're getting stronger on them. That's typically 1 or 2 primary movements per muscle group that you're deliberately trying to add weight or reps to over time. Everything beyond that, your accessory work, your finishers, the exercises that are really just filling out volume rather than driving your main progress, that's exactly where you have room to rotate freely for enjoyment without giving up much of anything scientifically. You get the motivation boost from variety where it costs you the least, while protecting the consistency where it actually matters for measuring real progress. Put all of this together and the strategy for avoiding junk volume looks less like a stopwatch and more like a filter. Ask whether a set is genuinely targeting the muscle you're training that day, not just assisting it. Ask whether you're actually finishing your working sets close enough to failure to register as a real stimulus, without needing to wreck yourself grinding out that last rep. And for the parts of your session that aren't your key tracked lifts, feel free to rotate. Feel free to have fun with it, because the science says that variety isn't hurting you there. And it's very likely the reason you'll still be showing up in the gym in 5 years instead of burning out in 5 months. Don't forget to subscribe, and you'll never pay fees for your fitness.